This is the OKAI Panther, and I was very intrigued by this scooter because it's dual suspension, dual hydraulic disc brakes, but most notably it has 12-inch wheels, which is very hard to find on a scooter that isn't super heavy. This thing is a little under 100 pounds. The only other scooters on the market really with 12-inch wheels that are not super heavy are the Apollo Pro and that Cabo Wolf King GTR, I believe. That's like 140 pounds almost. And that was my main draw to this scooter. It also has an interesting front-end suspension. I did, for now, change the front shock to be an air shock because the stock one is very stiff. I'll talk more about that later, but there is a lot of cool stuff going on for this scooter, but I do also have quite a few criticisms. So without further ado, let's get into the pros and cons. This review is going to be pretty off the cuff, so I'm just going to rattle things off as they come to mind, but I think what I want to do is start with the pros. So besides the things that initially attracted me to this scooter, I will point out that the disc brakes feel notably good. They have really good bite and really good feel, way more so than other scooters, even in the $2,000 or $3,000 price range. It also comes with 140mm rotors, which gives you extra ground clearance on top of the 12-inch wheels. Another design detail to appreciate on a true off-road scooter. Another notable quality I would say that is unique to this scooter is this front-end suspension system. Not just is it unique, but it's also very rigid. A lot of scooters in general have kind of a floppy, wobbly stem system. Sometimes you can get around with that with the dual pole systems, but this is actually single pole, but largely thanks to the suspension design, it allows for a pretty stiff front end. So I gotta say this scooter definitely inspires a lot more confidence than your typical off-road scooter does, so kudos for that. I will also say that the latch system is quite good. It disconnects and allows you to fold it very quickly, but also feels very secure. As far as everything else goes, I feel like that pretty much covers the pros that make this scooter stand out in a unique way. Otherwise, a lot of things that I'd say that are nice aren't really specific to the scooter, but kind of just go without saying when you spend this much. Now, unfortunately, I do have a lot of criticisms, and I'll try to keep it focused on the ones that are probably the most important, but let's start with a really ridiculous one. This is something I've never seen on a scooter before, but you can't actually shift gears in this scooter if the scooter's moving at all. So if you're moving and you want to shift gears, you can't. You have to come to a complete stop before you can shift gears. That's ridiculous, right? I didn't even think that would be a problem, but it is. Oh yeah, it'll let you know that the kickstand's down. I don't know, I guess that's kind of nice. I can take or leave that feature personally. So here we are in D. I'm moving like 1 mile an hour. See, I can't shift gears. But if I come to a complete stop, I can. Another crazy frustrating thing is that the first 2 gears, you only have 3 gears here, you're kind of just forced to be in rear wheel mode. You have no option to select for dual or single motor. The only dual motor option is the final gear, which has the most throttle, the highest speed. You don't get to go at any lower speeds in dual motor mode. You just don't get to do that. So that's an oversight in my opinion. Don't appreciate that for an off-road scooter, especially not with this one because honestly, it has one of the most touchy throttles of any scooter I've ever tried. I feel like your power options are, if you're very careful, 10%, and then if you pull it even a millimeter more, it goes to 100% power. It is so touchy. There's like no modulation with the throttle. It is basically 0 or 100 on the acceleration. And when you're off-road, you obviously want to use dual motor, so the torque is just ridiculous. You have very little control. You're constantly fighting the torque on this thing. Also, this ambient light area, I think that's a cool idea, I guess, but here's the problem. You see, you actually have these fins here, which might not seem like a problem, but if you're a more aggressive rider like me, you might appreciate this angle here because it's somewhere to put your foot. But the problem is your foot can actually get stuck here. You can get stuck here. I'd actually argue that that's hazardous. So, I mean, if that's the design required to make these lights work, I feel like it's not worth that compromise. So you can't really use this foot space for actual riding, because if you do, you'll likely get your foot stuck and it'll make it really hard to jump off if you need to. So another sketchy design decision in my opinion. Also, the suspension in its stock form is unbelievably stiff. The backside isn't as bad as the front. I don't know what it is. I think it has something to do with the leverage ratio of this wishbone fork system. It's very linear, whereas this one is not. Point being, for some reason, even this air shock that I swapped it out for it, very low pressure, is actually surprisingly stiff. It takes a lot just to get this to compress a little bit, so it's not as smooth or plush as other suspension systems, but I'm sure there's a way to figure that out. Another major annoyance, you can actually remove the battery, which is cool. I'm not against that at all. But for some reason, there's just play. There's no way to get rid of this play. This whole lid actually lifts off I'll show you guys that. This whole screen is actually a touch screen. You can control a lot of things here, screen brightness and stuff, that's nice. I actually have another scooter that doesn't have that, which is really dumb. So battery lock, watch this. Does that? Hold on a second. Okay, there it opens. Sometimes it pops up. This time it didn't. Maybe it was a little stuck or something. So yeah, you can open the battery, you can pull it out, you can charge it without having to move the scooter. So that's all cool, but unfortunately, there's like a little curve in space here. So there is always a little bit of play, which is lame. So perhaps the most upsetting thing, hypothetically, if I had no problems with this scooter, it would still be way too small. I think a lot of people over the height of like, I don't know, 5'8" are gonna feel like this scooter is particularly cramped. I'm 6'3". You can see if I just stand upright, I have no room to move my hips or anything. So that is tragic. But luckily that isn't the only thing I can't agree with on this scooter. So I mean, that alone basically invalidates any chance that I would actually ride this scooter. So I mean, it's just too small for a lot of people. I don't know, other than that, I feel like if there were a few things done differently, it could be an absolute masterpiece. I love, like I said, that it has the 12-inch wheels and it's not obnoxiously heavy. There is a range hit on this scooter if you are riding in dual motors. Let's see here, I have 97% battery right now. It's estimating that I only am gonna get 14 miles or so. That's not too unusual, but it's not a whole lot of range. I think a lot of people are gonna have a problem with that, but I'm like, well, it helps keep the scooter lighter, so that's fine. But I really hope that there's like a 2.0 version of this scooter that takes all the good things and fixes all the bad things, makes it a little bit bigger or longer. And there's just certain things that are ridiculous. Like it's unreal that you can't shift gears while you're moving. I mean, what vehicle in the world doesn't let you shift gears when you're moving? I mean, you can't really argue that that's a safety feature. If anything, I'd say it's the opposite. That and a few other things, if they can fix that, make it bigger, I think this could be an extremely competitive scooter. But until then, it's a big swing and a miss for me, unfortunately. I will be sending this back, but I'm glad I tried it. I had to try it. Yeah, it's the only scooter out there to really tick certain boxes, but unfortunately it missed many others for me. So anyway, that's my review on the OKAI Panther. The next scooter I might try is the Apollo Pro. We'll see. So I'm just gonna try to be as gentle as I can on the throttle to show you how torquey it is. I'm literally trying to accelerate as smoothly as possible. You'll see that it's not possible. I'm in the second gear, all right? Smooth start and just a little more throttle. Yeah, it's so jerky. I'm gonna go in the third gear, dual motor. Okay, you really gotta brace yourself just for a slow start. Yeah, that's crazy, dude. Okay, look, see, I'm not even moving, and then, yeah, there's no way to move without that much torque in the beginning. You can't even come to a gentle start. It's the most torquey throttle I've ever seen, but this one, the Teverun, you can control the acceleration curve, you can be single or dual motor in any gear. I don't know. It's ridiculous that a scooter this nice doesn't have such a basic feature. So this is kind of interesting. If you line up these two scooters, this is the Teverun Fighter 11 on the back. If you line up the decks so that they seem matched, you can tell that the deck is shorter in this way, right? The lip definitely starts a bit earlier and it does not go as far back. Honestly, yeah, the back of the tail is several inches further back. The front of the deck ends slightly sooner, but also the angle of the stem is more steep. All of that just makes this scooter seem a lot smaller than the Teverun. Even though the deck size seems pretty close, there's just a lot of other subtle details going on to make it fit much more smaller. It's pretty lined up here, right where the front of your foot might be, but look at how much closer the stem ends up being. Yeah, too bad. I think if they changed the geometry a little bit and made the deck slightly longer, could have a super nice scooter here that a lot of people could ride more comfortably. All right, so I don't want to end on too cynical of a note. The thing is that all of my criticisms aren't necessarily going to be relevant for everybody, so I do want to say this scooter has a lot of cool things going for it, and I want to point out again, I really respect the front end here. This suspension system has some quirks that I think you can get around if you put a softer front shock on here, but this one is for sure way too stiff, way too stiff. That being said though, this suspension system allows for the front end to be much more stiff than your typical mono or single pole stem design, and I really appreciate that. There's so much confidence that comes from the front end here. When you're riding, there's a lot less wobbles. So when I'm talking about the suspension stiffness, I'm saying that separately from the stem stiffness. The front end inspires a lot of confidence, but the suspension is too stiff. And if all of my other criticisms don't necessarily feel relevant to you, like you don't care about this little bit of play in the battery compartment, and if you're not as tall as me, I'm 6'3", maybe this scooter won't be too cramped for you. But I also think the odds are, if you're shorter than me, maybe you'll be lighter than me, and the front end and even the rear end suspension might feel obnoxiously stiff for you. But these do have a 165mm eye-to-eye shock length. Let me show you something real quick. Which means it's relatively easy to find suspension that you can adjust. You can get coil suspension with lighter weight springs and dampening if you want that, or an air spring. These are about $60-ish, $70-ish, and you can customize the spring weight. Shout outs to Conscious Finger on Reddit, who actually helped me realize that some of these adjustments and changes were possible on this exact scooter model. So if you're watching, thank you for that. My point is, if the stiffness of the suspension is an issue for you, there is a way to get around that. And if all the other things that I pointed out don't necessarily turn you off of the scooter completely, maybe you'll be really happy with this. Because I love the 12-inch tires, but I do not appreciate this really torquey throttle. If you're fine with that, cool. I'm struggling to stand on this scooter, so having barely enough room to stand comfortably on top of having a throttle that I have to fight constantly, it's too much for me. And if you don't really care that you can't change gears while you're riding and you're happy to just stay in the highest gear for your off-road riding all the time for that dual motor experience, that won't be a problem for you. And yeah, honestly, if you can get over all of those quirks, I think this scooter will be an awesome, awesome choice for you. And as far as what it offers for the price point, I think it's very competitive. So yeah, just putting all those opinions into perspective. Again, what bothers me may not bother you, but what doesn't bother me might bother you. Hopefully this video helped you understand that. All right, thank you. New channel. This is only my second full-length video. Please subscribe. Help me do what I'm doing here. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.